Oh, I didn't see you there. G'day, ZiggyD here. I've been giving it some thought lately, and I think that it's about time that you guys had a chance to design a unique item in Path of Exile. Now, I was recently gifted by one of my fantastic viewers the chance to design a second unique item. Now, a lot of you guys already know that I'm already working on a unique ring, so when I was gifted this, I thought, I don't really want to just create another unique for myself. I want to try and do something a little bit more interesting. So I got talking to Rory and some of the other guys from ZiggyD about this, and they came up with the idea of doing this community collaborative project where everyone gets together to design a unique item together. So this is step one of that unique designer process. Over the next few weeks, we'll be doing community polls where we'll decide on each of the different phases of the unique, and you guys will get to see and have a hand in evolving this item from a simple concept or a not existing concept into a complete and implemented unique item in the game in quite a few weeks' time. So here's how you guys get involved and get a hand in the creation of this item. Every week I'm going to post a video like this one, and alongside it will be a poll placed on the ZiggyD website. Now you guys will be able to, if you're watching from the YouTube channel, find that poll linked in the description below, and if you guys are viewing this video or viewing the post from the ZiggyD website, then you can simply go ahead and vote on the poll. So each week in these videos I'll describe the different options available to you guys, and I'll also discuss a bit about some of the implications of these items and give you guys some quotes and interesting little bits of information from the developers that also helped us design these ideas. So now that you guys know what we're doing here, let's move on to the selection of a base item for this unique. So for the selection of the base item type that we're going to be making this unique on, we have 4 options. So the selections for this week will be between Flask, Belt, Amulet, and Gloves. So we have 4 interesting utility slots that are all quite different from each other and all have a lot of potential in unique design. So let's kick things off with Flasks. Now, Flasks in Path of Exile are firstly very hard to say, but that's not the important thing. Flasks have incredible variants, and they also have a lot of potential unique design ideas that have not been explored yet. There's very few unique Flasks in Path of Exile, and a lot of them actually have only been added quite recently. Now, an interesting point about the Flask slot is that unlike other base item types, there is a lot of variance in the actual Flask types. So whereas a chest armor can have, armor, evasion, armor, yes, it can have a different combined defensive stats, they're all kind of defensive and there's not too much variance in the actual base item types. But with Flasks, we have a mixture of health, hybrid, we have mana, we have a huge variety of different utility Flasks that can be played with. So an interesting thing that Rory brought up about this Flask item slot is that the specific base Flask can have a huge effect on the actual design of the unique. Now, utility Flasks are already quite strong, while life and mana Flasks have the drawback of stopping when that resource is full. So when you use a health flask, the health flask effect stops once your health reaches max. Now, because of this, life and mana Flasks can have very, very powerful effects associated with them because they have that drawback of stopping when your resource is full. Now, another thing that Rory also noted was that there's a lot of customization potential for Flasks as well. They can change things like the charges used, the total maximum charges, charge recovery rates, Flask effect rates and durations. So there's a lot that can be changed around, and this means that we can have things that are like rapid, constant use sort of things, so you can use the Flask consistently and often, or you can have something that's very, very powerful but can only really be used once per portal, and it takes a long time to recover all of the charges to be able to use it again. Now, another interesting benefit I want to throw in about the Flask slot is that the Flask art is always available for you to look at on the UI. You don't have to go in your inventory, and it doesn't need a 3D art. You can see it right there on UI. It's always nice and there, so if we have a very cool looking Flask unique, then it's always going to be visible to you. Now, the next item slot that you can choose from is the Amulet slot. Amulets in Path of Exile are extremely varied and extremely powerful. You can get just about anything you can imagine stat-wise on Amulets, from defensive stats to defensive utility stats, other utility stats, offensive stats, spellcaster stats, just main stats, or pretty much anything you want. There's a huge variety. They have one of the longest mods list. If you look on PoE mods, it's massive. It's like you have to scroll the page to look at all the mods. So this means that the unique possibilities for an Amulet are almost endless. It's essentially a bit of a wildcard slot, so if you're a bit unsure on what sort of unique you'd like to see designed, then the Amulet might be a good choice for you. Now, an interesting point that Rory mentioned was that because Amulets are such a powerful and potent and varied slot, there's a big opportunity cost for taking a specific unique Amulet, because even rare Amulets can have a lot of power on them. You can get a ton of resistances, life, and damage on them. So this means that whatever we design unique-wise for the Amulet slot can be very powerful to offset this opportunity cost. And the next option is gloves. Gloves have a very strong offensive theme tied to them, and many of the uniques that currently exist play with this idea. For many builds, gloves are a huge source of crit chance and crit multiplier as well with Malagara's Virtuosity, and there are also some powerful uniques out there like Face Breakers that enable builds. Now because of this intense power of the glove slot and because it has so much offensive potential, there's a big opportunity cost to taking any other set of gloves that doesn't already exist. So creating another unique and then using that unique has a bigger opportunity cost tied to it. Now we've mentioned opportunity costs here again, and this means that potentially any gloves we design can be very powerful to offset this cost. Essentially, we need to be able to create things that can compete or be an alternative to something like Malagara's Virtuosity. Now, I also think that although gloves are very strongly themed for offense, I feel like there's kind of a lot of hand-related utility that's been underexplored as well. So instead of going the very powerful offensive kind of option in terms of designing a unique pair of gloves, we could also make something that was kind of playing around with this idea of hand-based utility. So changing the way that you attack enemies, like Face Breakers for example, or changing the way that you dish out damage, or giving you some sort of extra damage-based utility as well. So staying within that theme of damage dealing, but kind of changing things a little bit more interestingly. Now there is a downside associated with the gloves as a unique option. Rory said that ZiggyD is unlikely to create an alternate art race reward version of any gloves that we create, whereas the Flask, Belt, or Amulet could all have things that could be rewarded in the next or subsequent race seasons. The gloves are unlikely to make their way into that, so do keep that in mind if you decide to vote for gloves. Now the next choice you have for designing a unique item is the belt slot. Now I think belts are a little bit underappreciated in Path of Exile. They have a combined purpose of defense and utility. Now especially this utility side I think has been pretty underexplored and underappreciated in Path of Exile currently in terms of uniques. Now in terms of utility, belts also get access to a category of affixes that are not available anywhere else. Flask Effect and Flask Duration, Flask Charge Regeneration, all those Flask related affixes. Rory said that with these Flask effects we could potentially have a unique affix that has an effect on Flask consumption, so whenever you consume a Flask an effect triggers, or an effect while you're under the duration or effect of the Flask as well. Now belts are also a big source of life and resistances for many builds. Now because of this we can either play with that idea and enhance that idea, or we can use the opportunity cost of not being able to take those to create a more powerful unique mod, because when you can't take a bunch of life and resistances, or if you take that off the item, you can create a much more powerful unique mod to compensate that opportunity cost. Now an extra note about the belt option is that there currently exists no unique rustic sash in the game. So there's the potential to create something there. Not saying that we will definitely create a rustic sash unique, but that will probably be one of the options if you do vote for belt. So guys, with all of this information in mind, what is going to be your decision? Let us know in the polls on the ZiggyD website, or you can find it down in the description below, and we'll come back to you guys with the winner next week, and we'll come up with some ideas for unique mods that you guys can choose between. So happy voting. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you all come up with. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.